Good morning, good afternoon, and good night, and welcome to the Shadow Afters official podcast on HBO The Last of Us, where we seek the art beyond the clickers. I'm Brandon, one of your hosts. I'm joined by the great Mike Thomas and our special guest, Robert. What's up, man?
Hello.
Happy to be
I,
here.
yes, we're back, guys. It's back. Season 2 of The Last of Us premiered yesterday night, and we have seen the episode. We have so many things to talk about. Real quick, as usual, we're going to do a quick overview of the episode. This is the format of Beyond the Clickers. We're going to talk about diversions and expansion, the things that the show has done to improve, evolve, or add to the Last of Us mythos and story to be able to justify the translation into the medium of television. And then, of course, at the end, as always, we'll talk about the things that stayed, the things that remained almost identical to the video game that we love and have enjoyed multiple times throughout. As you guys know, The Last of Us Season 2 begins the translation and adaptation of The Last of Us Part 2, which is the phenomenal sequel to Naughty Dog's The Last of Us. And this episode, guys, what a great premiere! Solid, almost hour-long premiere. A lot of good, juicy stuff. Robert, when you saw it, what was your first reaction to watching the first episode of season 2?
My initial reaction was, yep, one of my favorite shows is back. And so far, everything's just as great as it was last year. It just sort of felt like a natural continuation of the first season, which is kind of slightly different from the video games when you have, a massive gap between releases between, the original game and part two. But this is the second season of a TV show that's coming 2 years later. And it felt like that a little bit, into where you get the previously on, and the opening scenes are tying in directly to where last season ended up. And so, yeah, I was very pleased. I think it's interesting. I think just from a TV watcher's perspective, like if you didn't know the game at all, and I assume we're still largely being spoiler free here from anything past episode 1. But if you didn't know the game, this is very much, it feels like a table setting episode of television. Like not much major really happens. It's more just reminding everyone watching where we're at, what we're doing. We're advancing the time a few years. This is where we're kicking everything up from. We have this new group of people. We're launching a couple new stories. We're introducing new characters. So it very much felt like the premiere of a new season of a well-liked television show. Being that us three are all gamers and have played the game, there's a lot more than that going on under the hood that we'll be able to talk about in later weeks that are exciting to see from a gamer's perspective. From a TV perspective, very solid first episode of season 2.
Mike Thomas, do you have thoughts? Overview
I have
of that episode.
I have thoughts for the overview. Yeah, this is a really great episode of TV, man. Like Robert was saying, getting the previously on, and then we were just reliving The Last of Us 1. I'm just like, God, this is one of my favorite stories of all time. Like, it's one thing for the previously on to get me that hyped, but that's just how much I love The Last of Us Part 1. And then we smash cut into a new scene where I'm just like, oh, we're doing this a little bit different. Okay, this is interesting. And from that point, I was hooked. I have a couple of gripes with this episode that we'll get into later, but overall, really great. Like Robert was saying, we set the table. We brought in these new characters and how they fit in Joel and Ellie's lives, and I think that worked beautifully. So yeah, this was really fun time.
One of the things that I love about this particular episode is because, just like Robert was saying, it does a great job at setting the table, like setting expectations, teeing up the things that will be developed as the season progresses, and I would even say for the rest of the show, right? Especially if we're considering that the next couple of seasons will be direct representations of the entirety of the part 2 storyline, is that we talked about cycles of violence, right? As one of the themes that it's going to be discussed, but also the idea of that every action has a consequence, and that particular story trope is automatically and instantly introduced from the very beginning of the episode. And that is something that you see throughout um, the episode, as people are reacting to people's decisions. And then, of course, that those first two shots, like directly right after Ellie says okay, which is funny to know that they mentioned on the HBO podcast that they actually had shot that because they didn't know how they were going to finish season one, if they were going to do it exactly as the game or with Joel's reaction to Ellie's response. But I like the fact that it started this season with Joel's response to Ellie, because there's no way that you don't understand that Joel knows that Ellie's okay is not because she's convinced. It's like she's just going with it, and you see the pain and the sorrow inside of Joel because he knows that he's the reason that she's feeling that way. And I think, even though 5 years later he's kind of oblivious of what's going on between them, it's something that does gnaw on him. And of course, right after that, we get the credit sequence, and then we get the people that suffered the consequences, or the people that suffered due to Joel's actions, because we're introduced to Abby and the Salt Lake City crew. And that is not something that happens in the game, especially in that order. And that's kind of, it's a great way to tee up the next section, which is Divergence and Expansion, right? The things that the show does that are unique to expand the universe and the story. And for those that know the game, and this is not a spoiler, it moves through time in a very particular way. It's told, there's linear storytelling, there's a lot of flashbacks in the story, and also because it's very perspective driven, the particular way the storylines in the game are, you go back and forth in time depending on who you're following in the story. And I kind of like the idea of them not necessarily going in that direction as of right now where the show has started, that they're just focusing on doing a more linear telling of the story, where you literally get a good feel of where every important character is in the same period of time. And then as the story moves forward, we'll keep seeing a more linear telling, because not only do we see Joel's reaction to Ellie, we automatically from there go directly to the Salt Lake City crew, Abby and friends, burial scene where they're burying the people that Joel just murdered to save Ellie, and they're suffering that pain, and she makes that vow of, we're gonna hunt him down, right? And the episode ends with her appearing in the 5 years later timeline, which you've enjoyed the rest of the characters enjoying up to that point. But I like the idea of that, like, because unless you're using that trope of moving around from perspective very carefully in the TV world, doesn't really work, especially when you just introduce characters and you haven't used that kind of trope before. You know what I mean? Like if you have a sci-fi show where you're used to that jumping back and forth, then when it happens, it stops being jarring because you already had an entire season of the back and forth, right? But if you're used to that linear type of storytelling, them making the decision to keep it going that way, especially for all characters involved, I think is a very good idea. Now, what was when you saw Joel's reaction to Ellie's no? What was your guys' reaction?
I was waiting for you, Mike.
Oh, Joel. Well, one thing about this episode for me is I'm not a huge fan of how they handled Joel and Ellie's relationship in this episode. I feel like when you're gonna do the 5 years later thing after she says okay, right? I feel like the way that the episode builds it is like, has Ellie been mad at Joel for 5 years? You know, and I feel like I feel like in the game we have a lot more context to what's going on with their relationship by the time we get to the moments that we see in this episode, and so it just puts them in a weird spot to me in the way that the show is kind of showcasing it. So go ahead.
I was to say, I think I agree. And part of the reason why I deferred to you, Mike, is because when Brandon asked that question, I don't think I had a big reaction to that moment in the show. Like it kind of played out as expected. It kind of played out largely how it plays out in the game. I mean, there's two tremendous actors playing characters I love. So I thought it was fine, but I don't think that moment resonated with me as well as some other parts of the series did. I did get a text from a friend today, a guy who doesn't know the games, different friend than I talked about last week. I have a lot of friends who watch the show that don't play the games that have no idea.
We love that.
I think
checked
we all
it.
do.
I get a text from him today. Did you watch The Last of Us? Yeah. He said, what'd you think? I said, yeah, I thought it was great. And he's like, I thought it was great too, but why are they making Ellie such an asshole all of a sudden?
Right.
Like
and
that. So I do agree with Mike that especially for people who don't know the game, it might be the jump to the way she's acting may be a little jarring.
That's exactly what I was fearing a bit, because that's how I felt. And I'm like, I know that there's more context here.
Right.
But from the way that the show is portraying it in the order of events that they're showcasing, she does just come across as an asshole.
And quite frankly, that'll probably be resolved next week. Like, you know what I mean?
Sure.
By next week, we're going to find out what's going on under the hood with both of these characters. All three of us are aware of certain scenes that are going to happen to contextualize all this stuff. It's just, I can see how that would be a little jarring. And there's not much I disliked about this show, but that is honestly not a moment that like super stood out to me.
I think the time jump too, though, is part of my concern, because when you do a time jump and then Ellie's acting like an asshole, it's like, oh, is Ellie just an asshole now? What? Right? What has changed?
I mean,
like that could just be her personality in this timeline.
Also, there's Catherine O'Hara like gives the line of dialogue like, "Oh my God, your 19-year-olds being an asshole to you, shocking!" Like, you know, and it is true. That is how 19-year-olds are. But but I don't know.
Yeah. So that's my one gripe with this episode. But yeah, like I didn't have a major reaction to that moment. And I think we'll talk about it a bit later, but it has something to do with just translating the story from game to television series. I think might be a little harder than the first game. And we'll get into that a little bit.
Also, just, I mean, Brandon, you've already talked about that opening Abby scene a little bit, so I'm assuming we're going to address that a little more in a minute. But it's like once that's happening, that's where my brain is at, because that's the thing that's the big standout difference, you know, from the first 10 minutes of the show. So immediately, that's what's firing up my brain, and everything that else just happened with Joel and Ellie was like, oh yeah, that's from the game, that's par from the course. But what are they doing with Abby?
And what's up with the pipes, man? I don't know.
Yep. No, and it's one of those things like I'm glad that you mentioned it that way. And I'm gonna go back to Ellie in a minute because I see your concern and your gripes with it. I don't agree with it, but I see it, and I respect it. And now with Abby, the reason why for me it is so powerful how we're introduced to her character and to her crew is because what a menacing force it is that you have these two characters that you love, Joel and Ellie, that you are rooting for an entire season, for as long as we've known the games or the show. And this new person that nobody knows who she is, right? The one mission that she's given to herself is, I'm going to kill everybody's favorite character. like the idea that the show starts with that. And by the way, Caitlin Dever just solidified that she was 100% without a doubt, like we said last time, she is the perfect Abby. And the moment that sent chills down my spine is when she puts the Firefly collar on the cross. She goes quiet and she goes slowly. And everybody goes, what?
Yeah.
When we kill him, we're going to do it slowly. And I'm like, this is a monster of a person. You know what I mean? And the energy that she brings to that performance, it's like, I think that's kind of what you were saying, right? It's like you want to see more of this character. Like my brain is entirely fired up and focused on what this character is going to bring to this world.
Yeah,
So I think that was one of the best things they could have added.
I have a lot of thoughts about the Abby scene, so I could definitely dive in here.
We're already here.
Yeah.
Just go.
This is the moment.
So
Bring it.
I think Brandon might be right, but I'm not 100% sure he's right, honestly. I'm not convinced. And I want to make it clear there's two separate things we're talking about here. One thing that we talked about a little bit last week is about how the game puts you into the shoes of certain characters, and that plays a big part in how the drama unfolds. I am not talking about that. I'm not. I'm strictly talking about all I'm talking about is the timeline perspective. Because as Brandon said, we're already moving plot things and reveals and stuff around for the show in a different order than the way they were unveiled in the game. And I'm not sure yet if that was necessary for television. It might be, and it might have been. We'll see how they tackle it, and we'll kind of see how the whole season ends up looking. I'm not sure it was necessary. One interesting thing is they chose to reveal more than the game lets on at this point, but they also didn't give up everything about Abby yet. Like we know she's connected to the Fireflies that were at the hospital in some way, and we know she's super pissed, right?
Yes.
So that's way more than you know at the game at this point, but it's also not the full story from when those reveals do eventually come at the game. I was surprised because just from reading interviews with like Druckmann and Craig Mazin and stuff before the show, I had a feeling that Abby was going to be the first scene in the show. I had a feeling we were going to get information early, but I would have never have guessed how they presented it. And in fact, I was guessing that we were going to see sort of a redo of the hospital at the end of part 1 from a different viewpoint, maybe. And that's not what happened. So it's just interesting what information they're doling out at this point in the show and what they're still choosing to hold back a little bit. And I don't think there are any hard answers about whether this is right or wrong. We don't really know yet. I just think it's interesting.
Hold on. It's interesting for sure. We've got Swiper Prime in the chat, though. Hey, Jamie, how's it going?
What's up, Jamie?
I think they're dampening the blow of the big event. It's possible.
Well, that's not. Remember, last week we were talking about how they may tweak some things to try to, in fact, dampen blows of events to come. So,
yeah, it's an interesting choice for sure. Like the Abby scene in a vacuum is phenomenal. And Caitlin Deaver's delivering a incredible performance. But yeah, it's just I'm afraid that they're like, for lack of a better term, like Thanosing her, where it's like, oh, well, now that we know that somebody's coming to do a thing, is it inevitable? Are we just gonna just like slowly be thinking about Abby for the next 3 episodes? You know, like I want to know how they tackle revealing it this soon, because like you guys are saying, once you do that, that's what anybody's thinking about. And so everything happening with Joel and Ellie and all that stuff is just kind of like, okay, that's cool, but what's going on with her? And I think that kind of nerfed this episode a little bit. It's still like an 8 out of 10 for me. That's what kept it from being like a 9 or a 10. The stuff with Abby, the stuff with Ellie, and that all is like slight tweaks that they've made. And I'm a little concerned that the changes that they've made in this episode are having the opposite effect of last season, where like every time they made a change, I'm like, I get it. Now I'm like, oh, I don't know if that was right. We'll see. It might not be wrong though, but I'm a little nervous.
So using the same type of conversation to go back to Ellie, in regards to changes or particular choices that they've made, right? And one of the things that they are actually, I believe that in episode 1, they're going out of their way to kind of bring home, is that there's a very strong and sharp difference between the Ellie of the game and the Ellie of the show. and is that they kind of accentuate how much the show's Ellie likes violence. Like that's not a big story point and characteristic for Ellie in the game.
Mhm.
Like Ellie is just this girl that has had to survive and knows how to defend herself and makes decisions to protect those that she loves in one way, shape, or form. But from season one of the characteristics that they've been making a point to show how is a particular trait that this version of Ellie has is that she has this interest in violence. She has a violent nature. She has a violent heart. And of course when Tommy goes, "Hey, you're just like my brother. You two are the same people." And it's like Joel does dishes out violence because he doesn't have a choice, but Ellie kind of relishes in it in a way. And that is one of the things that they kind of present when you're in Ellie's dojo, when you see her training, and how when she's locked into a violent moment, she's enjoying herself and doesn't want to stop.
Yeah,
And
I,
that's a very particular trait that they're making a point to make a big deal out of for this version of Ellie that I find interesting.
I was
And
thinking about disagreeing with you, but then I remembered the practice fight, the fight scene from the episode
yes,
1 where she's doing some, practice combat and just ends up wailing on the guy and not letting up.
yeah, and
So in light of that, I think your point is fair. I think Last of Us video game, Ellie, I wouldn't say that it's that she likes violence. It's that she's good at it, for lack of a better word,
correct.
maybe.
No,
And that she's
correct.
like, she just gets blinders on. Like, when
Yes.
Ellie gets to the point where something has to be done or accomplished or
Hmm.
revenged or something has to happen, it's just like blinders and
Right.
she's going to do what needs to be done. So I
Right.
don't know if that's the same as quote unquote liking violence, but I don't disagree that maybe there's a slight
Well,
difference.
there's an unhinged thing, and especially like the idea that she's a teenager, she's figuring herself out. She's creating this own independence. She's just deciding who she is and who she's going to be, and the idea that this side of her is part of her identity at this point, and like the way she celebrates. I don't know. It's something very particular that I find very interesting.
Mhm.
Um, and to tie this, which again is something different, is that not to jump scenes, but when we see what happens with the stalker, right? And she's when she's practicing shooting with Tommy, she talks about herself like she's this superhuman, unbeatable person, right? But when you go to the stalker encounter, by the way, we got to talk about the stalker, but when we go to that stalker encounter, what that encounter proves is that she does not have anything figured it out. Because if she was anybody else, she lost
Yeah.
because she got bit. And the way she just covers it up as she cuts herself to hide the bite mark, it makes me think the way she handled it and was portrayed, how many times has she had to do this to hide the fact that she did not escape unscathed? And
Yeah.
and I don't know, it's a fascinating take on the character that I think is very unique for good measure or bad measure. I just find it interesting. They're interesting choices.
It's going back to like her and her violent like nature. I do think the show is playing it up a little bit more because remember what she says, by the way, throughout this episode is you're just like Joel, like that's
Mm-hmm.
what they're leaning into. And Joel is very violent, as we've seen in this
Yes.
episode, where
Yes.
any confrontation, he's willing to throw hands, right?
Yep.
And so I think they're leaning they're leaning into that a little bit more. Because again, we've talked about the theme of this season being the cycle of violence. So I think
Okay.
the show is trying to make it a little bit more obvious because first go around, let's face it, some people were idiots and didn't get it.
Yep. And I remember the conversations like inside the episode things that we did in season one. Like Craig Mazin is really interested in Ellie's interaction with violence. Like, and that's like that was a big story point in the development of that character in season 1, which I find very interesting how they're doubling down this season, which kind of also explains the assholeness that she has adopted, because it's not just about fighting or finishing off clickers or infected. Everything she does is violent, even in her relationships. She treats Joel emotionally violently. Like, even though he's not physically attacked, she knows she's destroying him with her reactions in a way, shape, or form. And she's not holding back. So I just find that very interesting.
I still just think that a lot of this stuff is going to be resolved next week and fall more in line with the way things play out and the way Ellie reacts to things in the game. I think we'll see.
Yeah, that's fair. It is interesting though how Ellie's her violent nature, it is just a product too of what time she's grown up in. Like from birth, having to deal with clickers. I think that's why Ellie and Dina are the way that they are, where it's like, yeah, you want to be the badass who can survive in this world, right?
Yes.
The weak
Yes.
don't survive. So
Not depend on anybody.
Ellie's a
Don't
pretty
pull
angry.
punches.
Ellie's a pretty angry girl in the game. I don't know if she's this
for
angry,
sure.
but she's pretty angry.
True.
Like,
True.
I don't think like if video game Ellie is a 9, HBO Ellie is a 10. Like it's not like it's a big discrepancy.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I do think this
I think
episode was like just trying to highlight it a bit more.
Yeah. Like they're making it a point to make it something for us to pay attention to. I think they're just making it more apparent because they have more time to kind of explore it and show it in different facets.
It's kind of like giving Joel the therapist, where it's like we need to show.
Talk about Gale.
Yeah, well, you see, that was your segue. We need to talk about that because it's just the show saying, hey, Joel realizes something's wrong with his relationship with Ellie, and he is trying to seek help and figure that out. But also, he's Joel, and he's big-headed, and he's stubborn, and he just quits and gives up right away.
Yes.
But I love the addition of Gale. I thought that was such a smart choice.
Whiskey talk with Gale. But yeah, it's and I'm really excited for whenever Eugene is revealed, because we know that Joey Pants is playing Eugene at some point. But yeah, Catherine O'Hara was great. I'm glad that we're going to see more of her in the next couple of episodes. But yeah, the idea that Joel knows what he did, but he cannot accept it as something wrong because he doesn't regret his choice. And that's just powerful. That scene when he just listens to her and she's asking these questions and the tears are going down his eyes and he just says, I saved her, and walks away. That was just heartbreaking. That was just heavy, man.
I love that moment. And she asked him, she's like, did you hurt her? And he can't even answer. He just like quickly shakes his head no. And she's like, well, what did you do? And he's like, I saved her. Such a good moment.
Yeah. Such great.
It's such a great look into his psyche too, because is he pushing his feelings down, or is he just like resolute in himself, like, yeah, I did the right thing, I saved her,
right? And it's like what he says is 100% the truth. That's exactly what he did. And then the therapist is also right in drilling to the problem, because that is also what fucked everything up now, because it's the lie, the big lie, and
you betrayed her trust. And how the unveiling of this truth and of this lie is also a very interesting topic of discussion that hopefully will be discussed and presented, and I can't wait to see how that is unveiled in this medium. But all the different people that Joel interacted with through the episode, like, by the way, Isabella Merced as Tina.
Absolutely the highlight of the episode for me.
She is so wonderful.
So great.
So wonderful. And like that first interaction, I love the fact that the first person we see her interact with is Joel. And I don't know. Dina's great. Isabella Mercedes Dina is just
It's such a
chef's kiss.
fantastic performance, dude. Like,
Yeah.
it's great. But Robert, you wanted to say?
I was going to say it's important because if this season or seasons, if the seasons adapting Last of Us Part 2 are going to work, Abby has to work and Dina has to work. They have to. And if they don't, show has a big problem.
Yep.
So
Yep.
on both of those regards, it's just like feels like we
Yep.
can breathe a sigh of relief after this
Yep.
episode because they both seem in good hands.
I have a feeling we should not forget Tommy too. Like Tommy's development through the story also plays a big factor too, and I like how we're able to see where Tommy is now. Like Joel, Benji, Maria, like that conversation. Oh, by the way, did everybody kind of chuckle when they talked about the construction meter dial because they want Joel to build faster? And as soon as Tommy comes back, he goes, "Did you tell her about the dial?" Maria just goes, "Yes."
I like seeing Joel in like town planner mode. That was pretty fun.
Yeah, that was fun. I found it. Jamie in the chat says, I found it interesting. Her and Joel were going to watch a movie. Felt a little weird to me.
I don't think they were. I think that was to get Ellie to talk to Joel so they could
Right.
have movie night.
Oh, it might have been
Yes.
arranged to
Yeah.
reconnect. Yeah, maybe.
She was trying
Because-
to
Because she
mend
went to see
fences.
Joel and she didn't say, "Hey, we watching a movie tonight." Like that interaction
Yeah.
never happens between the two.
Yeah.
So I think she's just
Yeah.
lying to Ellie, and since Ellie says nope, she's just like, "Cool, I tried. I did what I could do."
And it's like, Dina knows that if she came to Joel and say, "Hey, let's watch a movie tonight," Joel's not going to say no if Dina says that Ellie's coming.
Right.
Like she's a mastermind, bro.
Yeah,
She knows all the moves. Everybody's playing checkers. Dina's playing chess, guys.
that's what makes
Joel
this
also-
performance so great, though, to me, because you can see the layers in Isabella's performance of like how she's interacting with all of the characters slightly differently
Yep.
to achieve what her goal is. And again,
Yeah.
she's down the road, dude.
Yep. You got something, Robert?
No, I was just gonna say, Joel obviously really wants to reconnect with Ellie too. So it could be Dina setting up, or it could be Joel like, "Hey, we could have a movie night. Maybe you invite Ellie."
Like we
Yeah.
can figure this out.
Yeah, just a little bit of scheming to get those two in the
Yep.
same room.
Yeah.
No, and you can tell that also Joel is kind of like, he knows that if he wanted to get assistance from someone to bring Ellie back into the fold, it's Dina. Like he knows that she can wrap herself around and pull her to the side. Now we got to talk about the market because it's a mixture of something that stayed almost exactly the same. Like that whole sequence when they go to the supermarket is phenomenal because for those video game lovers, and I'm cutting into the what stayed the same, is like that entire sequence is almost happens exactly how it happens in the game, almost, and that was magical. But the one thing that they changed, which to me was freaking brilliant, that caught me by surprise, and I loved every minute of it, is that in this market sequence in the game, you have, I think it's 2 clickers and like a runner. That's all you have. And for those that need a refresher, runner are those that are freshly infected and are able to see and run and scream. Clickers, of course, are the blinded, deadly version of infected. But they took down 2 clickers upstairs. But on the bottom of the supermarket, we find a stalker for the first time. In part 2, we don't see stalkers till further into the game. So I like the fact that not only that they made it a point to show us how much every living character in this world has evolved. So not just the characters that we follow, but also how the infection is evolving and the infected are evolving. And the fact that I was scared shitless when the stalker appeared on the corner of my eye, I don't know. That to me, that was pure magic. What were your thoughts, guys, when you guys saw the stalker for the first time?
Well, first of all, rewinding a bit and just talking about the fidelity to the game. So I was watching with my 15-year-old daughter. We've both played the game, and when we
Nice.
first see the grocery store, I was like, I know how to get into that grocery store. You climb up on the truck, then to the roof, and we fall through to the floor, and then like cut to 102 minutes later, it's like that's exactly what she's doing. she's climbing up in the truck and going to the roof. And then, you know, Ellie finds the glass bottle and is going to pick up the bottle to distract. And it's just basically the Leonardo DiCaprio Once Upon a Time in Hollywood pointing me. You know, it's like, yeah, but I know that.
They did the thing.
They did the thing. So that was fun. As far as the stalker, it was probably the most notable moment for me of the night from a directing standpoint. Just that slow pan from right to left as the camera's following Ellie as she's sneaking behind the aisles. And then like 2 or 3 times just in the right corner of the frame, you're catching a glimpse of the stalker cutting across just behind her. That is some top-notch camera work right there. I don't know if we credit the director or the cinematographer or who, but man, they put that together so that it looked cool and was creepy, and hairs on the back of your neck go up a little bit. And reminds us this is a horror show and a pretty good one.
Yeah.
Which is something season 1 didn't do a ton of either. That's what I thought was very fascinating. Where it's like, oh, this might be the scariest moment of the series so far, because season 1 kind of shied away from all of the battles between the clickers and Joel and Ellie. So that was really interesting.
Yeah. One of my favorite moments is when that kind of highlights why this infected is so different. When Ellie goes, "Run at me," and it didn't. Like, it just hid away. That was one of those moments where you're like, what is going on? Like, of course, we know, but I part of me wants to talk to someone that doesn't know the game, and I kind of want to know their reaction to it, because it's funny. As someone like me, I finished the Walking Dead show probably like a year ago, like very late in the game, and like towards the end of the series,
relative.
Stop it. Fair. Towards the end of the series, you kind of get like evolved walkers or whatever, which is kind of lazy, but you know, they do the thing where they start climbing stuff or whatever.
Well, and also The Walking Dead would change the rules of their zombies like every 3 episodes just to suit whatever they needed that episode.
Right.
Like sometimes if you covered yourself in blood, you were okay to walk through a horde, and other days, forget about it.
If we didn't like the character,
so my big thing here is I just want Last of Us to be consistent in a way The Walking Dead was not. So if we have stalkers now, we have stalkers now. But yeah,
I can't wait to see the others, and how more we see. I know there's a clip over there of a bloater, and that's awesome. The idea that it finally might take a bloater down, but there's other evolutions of infected that I'm interested in seeing. So I'm excited. But yeah, like, so Stalker in the Market, we talked about that. We finally get a nice little shot with the Council of Jackson, because they mentioned the council back in the first season, but we never actually see a meeting. And because Ellie and Dina are part of that patrol squad, we see them being debriefed of the information due to the new encounter. I like the little moment that we see where Maria has really grown, like she really trusts Ellie. Like, no matter her attitude or what anybody or how she reacts, she knows that Ellie does care. You know what I mean?
Also, shout out to Dina for just lying straight up to get the point across.
I was gonna say I like the little bit Maria's like, well, clearly Dina was lying, but I think I believe Ellie. Like, that was a nice little
No, and I love the fact that you know that Dina's that one friend where you go, yo, when they called you, just let them know that I was 7-Eleven. Yeah, I saw him. like Dina's that guy.
With me the entire time. What are you talking about, bro?
What are you talking about, bro? And also I love how Tommy tries to be like he's failing as the defender uncle or parents. Like, no, it's different. And literally Maria goes, different how? Like, what are you talking about? He's not winning any battles. But that was great. That was a great, nice moment. Also, fun tidbit, in the game, in the whole New Year's Eve scene, they were supposed to have a band, but they didn't have time to animate it. So they just had a recording. So in the show, of course, now they have a band, and we have a special guest appearance by Gustavo Santolaya, which is the actual composer of The Last of Us music. So that was a great moment of seeing him just... It's funny because going back to the announcement of The Last of Us Part 2. If you guys remember, it was Gustavo Santolaya in a stage just playing his guitar, and suddenly it cut to the New Year sequence. That's how this game was announced. And the
Yeah.
fact that they're able to recreate that in the show to me was just magical. And the last little bit of expansion is that the fact that the fungal vines are in the branches of that broken pipe. And that is the reason why throughout the clips we see a horde of infected attacking Jackson, which of course is a brand new development. This doesn't happen in the game. Of course, a show of this scale, they have the opportunity to do that. And I kind of like the idea that because of the precedent that the show has provided us, that there is a fungal network, which is an original creation of the show. There is a fungal network. They've created a tapestry where this is not just bait to create an action sequence. Like, it is a story driven event. And I am excited for that because it's also going to play into other encounters with infected that occur with other characters. So I kind of like see that just playing together and molding together with the attack of Jackson. So I'm very excited for that. Very excited. What do you guys thought when you saw the vines, especially after the sparklers and New Year's?
I thought it was cool. My big thing is like I wasn't even sure we were gonna go back to that because if you like watch the trailers for this season, it looks like spores maybe coming to the show. Yeah, they play a huge part in the game.
Yes.
They're not in season 1 of the show. They're replaced by basically the tendrils or the vines, which
Right.
makes sense because we don't want our lead characters to have to wear face masks through entire sequences.
Tell that to Pedro.
And then you see, actually, he gets used to that over in the Mandalorian.
Yeah.
Somebody else.
Well,
I
he's
mean,
not,
is he
he's not
on
even in a
set
suit.
anymore?
I know. That's what I'm
No.
saying. Someone else gets to put on a mask and he can just call in his lines. So maybe he was hoping for the gas mask here. But so if you watch the trailers for the season, there are some hints that maybe we're getting spores this year. So there was part of me
Yes.
that's like, maybe we don't need, maybe they're doing that. Maybe we don't need the vines anymore. Maybe that was just a Boston thing that was necessitate. What am I trying to say? which
Necessary?
which was necessary based on the Boston plot of season 1. And then when they pop out of the pipe, it's like, oh, that's right. We have vines on this show. I thought it was pretty.
This thing.
It's a good bit of writing too, because it's clever. Because we get a good look at that pipe earlier in the show, and we think it's just there to show us Joel's job now. This is Joel's job.
Yeah.
This is what Joel has to figure out. This is what the city has to figure out as they deal with their infrastructure. But no, they're actually giving us that shot because scarier delights await when we see that pipe later. So clever bit of writing.
It's interesting, my role on this podcast changing from Last of Us expert to just complete normie for The Last of Us 2, because those vines show up and I'm like, what the hell is going on? Because I forgot that was set up in season 1.
Right.
And so until this conversation, I'm like, oh yeah, that was a thing.
And I might be wrong, but I think it's like only in the early Boston episodes of season 1. Do you even see them later in the show, Brandon? I don't remember. But I just remember like when they're in Boston and around the Capitol and stuff, you see like the sort of paved roadways just covered in them.
Yeah, so I think so. They make a deliberate effort to show it in Boston.
Yes.
You really don't see it beyond Boston, but I have a sense that what we see happening in Kansas City with the asphalt and the bottom of buildings, how it starts to kind of corrode and kind of crumble, like what leads to the explosion of infected at the end of the Kansas City arc. I have a feeling that that's a version of that.
And it's also just a writer's crutch. It's like, this is why the infected always know where to go. This is why our heroes
it's
are
not
always,
a lazy one.
Right. Yeah, right. It's like, this is why our heroes are always going to have to contend with infected, because there's probably tendrils around and they're going to end up knowing where to go.
Yeah, and it's also cool because if spores do come back, which I heard the rumor as well, I like the idea of spores being part of the evolution of the infection, not just being just a simple add-on. Because if you remember, there's a type, there's something that bloaters do that is spore related, and there's something that's a different type of inspected that's new to the part 2 mythos that has to do with spores as well. So I wonder if that's just the way that the infection is evolving, and that's just one of the, because remember, it just wants to connect, right? Because remember, back to the idea of love, and like what David says in a freakishly dark tone, like cordyceps, like an example of love. It just loves and controls and wants to connect everything. It's evolving in a way where it's able to connect in different ways. So I wonder if that's the expression that they're going with as the cordyceps infection continues to evolve in different forms and shapes.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Well,
interesting to introduce the spores because, like you were just saying, the sepsis are already evolving anyway. Because we introduced a new type in this episode, so
Yeah.
you very well can just say, "Yeah, more shit is happening. You're gonna see it later.
well,
We're gonna have to start wearing masks now."
we'll see what happens. We're doing a little bit of guesswork based on a couple seconds from a trailer,
right.
so we don't know.
We have no
Also-
clue, damn it.
That's the fun, guys.
Also, necessitate was the word I was looking for. Don't blame me. I'm a writer. One day I'll learn how to podcast.
So throughout these entire spiel, you were just searching your thesaurus
Uh,
to find out what was the right word.
I
Well
can
done.
I can multitask, Brandon. I was listening.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Now, moving forward into our show, let's talk about the things that stayed. Things that stayed almost identical, and we definitely have to go back to Dina and Ellie, because this is how you know that you got the right performers for these roles, because you don't miss the Dina and Ellie of the game. You feel right at home with Bella and Isabella as these characters. Every moment they're on screen together, sparks fly. It is just beautiful. Their interaction, their chemistry, they're hilarious. And I love how different they are, the dichotomies in their personalities, but how that allows them to blend so well together on screen. I love the idea of the bottle literally being clicker bait. That to me was chef's kiss, and I love how even though Ellie is gun ho, hey, let's go get this clickers, Dina is the mastermind. It's like, no, there's two. You're gonna do this. You're gonna go that way. You're gonna throw the bottle that way.
You know what we really needed? She needed to pick up a brick first, and then be like, and then change her
See-
mind and be like, nah,
see,
I'm going bottle
yes.
instead.
Yes.
that would be
yes.
great.
So good. I mean, they were such a joy to watch, and so that was one of those things that definitely felt it just jumped out of the game into real life, and the idea that you don't miss the performances from the game either. Like, you don't miss Ashley Johnson, you don't miss I forgot her name that plays Dina. Even though you love their performances, these actresses have made these performances their own, and they're great.
I think that comes back to what you said, though, is it's a slightly different Ellie, not a majorly different Ellie, but like a
Right.
2% different Ellie.
Yes.
So
Yes. A violent no.
It's same with Dina though. It's like she's
Yeah.
slightly different, but
Yep.
it works in the context of the show, and I love their relationship so much because we see how different that the two of them are. But you also see how much they're the same. Like Dina's cracking stupid puns, making Ellie laugh, and it's just like
barbecue.
And then you realize, oh, this is why her and Joel get along. Okay, because she's just Ellie, but happy. Season 1
Yes.
Ellie. That's basically the vibe you get from Dina.
Yes. Like,
yeah,
she knows that the way to Ellie's heart is bad puns.
Yeah.
again,
It's the way you do
everything about Dina and Isabella Merced was like my favorite part of this episode.
Yes.
Like,
100%. I have to agree with that. Sniper training with Uncle Tommy. That was almost just like the game. That was phenomenal. Different season, but same principle and interaction. That was great. I was so happy when this happened. We finally get a workbench montage.
Yeah.
Like, for those that have played The Last of Us, know that some of the best moments are in a workbench. Because part of this apocalyptic world, video game world, is that there's very few resources. So when you find training manuals, or when you find spare parts, or when you find special tools, it allows you to upgrade and care for your gear. And we actually see Ellie doing the thing. And one of the things that part two does that's very distinct is that they're a lot more detailed when you're in the workbench, where you literally see every single little detail of what you're modifying, cleaning, or adding to your weapons.
It's the
And
power of the PS4, baby.
Yeah,
It's
bro. Yeah, bro. And the fact that we see her doing the thing that we see consistently as you're trying to get the best gun in the game, to me that warmed my heart. It was one of those, and this is the kind of thing that I love because it's so organic. Like, it's not, it doesn't feel like, oh hey guys, we're gonna say booyah at the end of the sentence. You know what I mean? It doesn't feel that way. It's just something. Sorry,
I'm sorry, it's just the random shot at Justice League came out of nowhere.
Hey man, it's a bad example. Because it's the right example of a bad thing.
I
Go.
was just gonna
But
say, no, go on, Brandon. Go ahead and finish your thought.
No, but I love the fact that we're able to experience that with Ellie in her natural habitat. That this is something that she does, especially before runs, which is what we would do before encounters with infected and stuff like that. But
I was just gonna say, I agree. It did make me smile. And again, if you don't play the game, I don't know if I'd call the workbench scenes one of the best parts of the game, but it is cool because instead of being completely buried in menus, you get like a little graphic of like either Joel or Ellie like taking apart and then reassembling the weapon as you're fiddling with your menus.
Right.
Although it's kind of a frustrating reminder for me because every goddamn time I play a Last of Us game, I somehow miss one of the workbenches. So I never get like the 100% completion on the workbenches
because you miss the workbench.
There's always like one that eludes me. So when that scene came on, there's a little bit like fucking workbenches.
That's the one you missed, Robert.
Yeah, that's the one I missed.
But
I still love the workbench where you're working on the workbench, you get attacked.
Oh yeah,
which was a big nice surprise in part two.
That's like a huge Naughty Dog thing where they do that in the Uncharted games too, where you'll do like there'll be a bit of gameplay that you do like over and over and over again. Like you'll pick up a ladder and you'll put it here to climb up the ladder, and it's just canned animation. And it just gets to the point where you almost go to sleep doing it. And then 8 hours in the game, all of a sudden,
the ladder breaks.
A villain or a zombie. Yeah, the ladder breaks, or there'll be an enemy at the top kicking you down, and it scares the shit out of you. That's like one of the big things in Naughty Dog's bag grips. And every time they do it, I just smile and like, you got me, Naughty Dog. Well played.
It's one of my favorite gaming tropes. One that sticks out to me is Batman Arkham Knight, where you're just grappling through the city, and then out of nowhere, you grapple to a building, and Man-Bat just like...
I knew exactly what you were going to say, Mike. Yeah. That Man-Bat jump scare is seriously one of the most effective jump scares in the history of video games for exactly that reason.
Because
Mike Thomas could not possibly be more right with the reference there.
Three games, you're just grappling around the city, gliding, and this one time, this thing just scares the living crap out of you. I finished the mission the first time he scares me because I'm like, oh, he's not getting me again, and I had to track down Man-Bat. I took him down right then. But yeah, that's so great. I love the workbench. I just love because we spend so much time there. Like it's not a big moment of the game, but as a player, it's like, oh yeah, I spend so much time here, like modding shit, and like
it's like a cultural thing. Like you're home, you know where you're at, you know what's happening, you know what we're here to do. And
it's
you
just
do the thing.
It's like such a satisfying bit of audio design in the games. There's like the sliding and the clicking, and it's like I'm totally convinced this is how weapons get upgraded in the real world, which I'm sure they are not. But
and it's funny because if you go back to the last episode of season 1, as Joel is doing his walk of death through the hospital, the different weapons that he picks up, they're all modified weapons like you would have throughout the game.
Yeah. No. So he achieved the loadout the easy way. He just grabbed them. But yes.
So as we wrap up, very simple things. Ellie's room, the guitar with the moth, the switchblade scarred table, Savage Starlight. That was phenomenal. Shimmer, we meet Shimmer as a baby or as a small little horse pony in season one, but we have that scene of Hey Shimmer um, in part two. We get the name drop of Kat, which is Ellie's ex and the person that actually did the tattoo on her arm. So that was a nice name drop. That was just like the game. The Marcus sequence, we already talked about it. And then the Happy New Year party. Um, the best parts about it and the worst parts about it with Seth and all that. Literally, that was like shot by shot. Even the intro sequence when the camera just pans down and shoots Ellie from the rear. That was just, I don't know. It was just phenomenal visual storytelling, and I love the fact that they understood how powerful and perfect the performance and the delivery of that scene was in the game. That they understood why it needed to be that way.
It just honestly felt like a one-to-one representation of the
It
game
was.
or
It
adaptation
was,
of the
yeah.
game. I mean, even like you said, even some of the angles were exactly how it plays out in the game.
Yeah. Dina dancing with everybody and pulling everyone around was exactly the same. The way young Mancino as playing Jesse would just lie on, like everything was just, it was just great.
The dialogue was almost word for word too, and I
Yes.
think that just highlights how
A
strong the
hot
writing.
pile of garbage.
It just highlights how strong the writing is in that video game, and that just again I think is a testament to how great video games have become. Where it's like the TV show didn't have to change a thing; it was just perfect.
It's also ties into what I talked about last week of respecting the source material. Like some people will get a hold of an adaptation and they will make changes just to make it theirs. But on The Last of Us, if Neil Druckmann and Craig Mazin think they can do better, they'll do better. But if they think there's no way we can do better than this, why even try? You literally just get the game, and fine by me.
They're literally the epitome of if it ain't broke,
don't fix it. Yeah,
don't fix it. But yeah, guys, I think we've done the thing. I mean, what a phenomenal start. I love how from it's funny because I mentioned that this part two is controversial. And in certain points of this episode, we're already in different places. And I'm excited to see how, as the show progresses, we either stay in our stances or cross over or join forces. I kind of want to see how it goes. And I'm actually excited because we are in different places in certain things, and I'm really interested to see how our conversation continues to develop and differentiate itself as the season progresses. Any final thoughts on episode 1 of season 2, guys?
Final thoughts, I guess, would just be it was a good episode. I really enjoyed it. I have some minor gripes here and there that we touched on, but like on the whole, it was still a phenomenal episode. I'm excited to see where we go in episode 2 because we had quite the stinger at the end of this episode with Abby showing up. So where do we go from there?
I have no gripes. I maybe liked it a little bit better than Mike did. I'd probably go 9 out of 10 if I was rating. But it's just more like I have no gripes, but there like we talked about a couple things where I fall more in line of, well, that was interesting, you know, especially with the changes. It's like that was interesting. That could work. Let's see how it plays out from here.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the creators of the show have garnered so much goodwill with their decisions in season 1 that we feel more comfortable giving them that allowance, right? As an audience. And hopefully those that are show only also don't. It's funny because I think part of the gripes that we have are probably because of our connection to the source material. I kind of want to have conversations with people that are not video game fans of it. I'll try and I have a couple of friends at work that I'll probably have these conversations with, and maybe I can bring something back on next episode. But I do want to say,
Brandon reporting from Normieville.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'll continue to update you guys on the texts I get from unsuspecting friends.
I do want to say that I love the fact that Abby's character, as is introduced, I love how her introduction actually ends at the end of the episode. It doesn't end in the beginning. Her introduction ends at the end of the episode, because when you see the Salt Lake City crew arrive to Jackson, and the last shot you get is an evil grin on Abby's face. Like
5 years later, by the way.
Yes, yes. And so she's being harboring. She's being like, and now she's there, and literally that grin on her face is saying, I got you. Like, you know what I mean? Like, she has that, in that sense of gratified rage, kind of. To me, it's, again, sends shivers down my spine, and I can't wait to see how the show plays this part of the story out. So
Speaking of playing with Abby, before we close this episode out, I need to make this point, because we're never going to talk about it again, because we don't need to talk about it anymore. I find it interesting that we're introduced to Ellie again, and she's sparring, right? And she's fighting somebody way bigger than her, and she's fighting this clicker, this stalker that's bigger than her, and it feels like, oh, she's struggling in these fights. She would struggle with Abby, who would be bigger than her. And it's like, I just find that interesting how that's not what they're doing, because it feels like, oh, we're teeing this up of she struggles with people twice her size. And then Abby's not twice her size in this iteration. I just find that they didn't have to film it that way. I just find that as an interesting choice. But we're not going to talk about Abby's size anymore. That's why I had to bring it up here.
No, it's good, because it also kind of talks to you about that it's all to inform who Ellie is and how she reacts no matter how big the adversary. And I like how it informs her character, not her relationship to this other person, whoever she is going to be in Ellie's life, right?
To me, the way it was structured in the episode, that just comes down to Caitlin Dever and how well she sells it, which she did, because the whole thing of like introducing a brand new nemesis in the first scene, then we go an entire 60 minutes and then calling back to it. I feel like that's like a standard TV thing. Like, you could probably count Breaking Bad episodes where a similar sort of construction happens. So it's more just about like, is Dever selling it? And hell yeah, she is.
Oh yeah.
And see, that's what I call, it's the Batman effect. You know what I mean? They pick this actor that everybody thinks he's going to be Batman. Everyone's like, no, this guy's going to suck. But suddenly when you see him in the suit in a room, you're like, it's Batman. You know what I mean? Like, it's the Batman effect. I'm Batman. Abby's going to do that now for the next couple of scenes. Like, I'm Batman.
I'm Vengeance.
Literally. Damn it. We have to hashtag that.
We did the thing. If you enjoyed this, like, subscribe, do all the fun stuff. All the links are in the description. You can follow us on all the socials. Brandon, this was a blast, dude. Can't wait to do it next week.
Robert, where can we find you, man?
You know what? Just Google my byline, Robert Bryan Taylor. That's me. And if you Google Robert Bryan Taylor, all my fun author profiles and social media feeds and everything will come up. How's that?
Links also in the description.
Oh yeah, RBT Rights. That's my website. Links there. Yeah. There we go.
And you can find me here on the Shadow After, on Beyond the Clickers, and any other podcast that I feel I have time to live in and enjoy. Guys, thank you for joining us on this week's edition of Beyond the Clickers. We're excited to do this for another season. Thank you for your support. If you love what we do here on the Chatter After, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. Make sure you click on that bell for notifications. And make sure you share it with friends that love The Last of Us just like us. We want to hear from you. We want to hear your comments. And we would love to see you in the conversation every Monday night when we stream live our thoughts of the previous episode of The Last of Us on HBO. And as always,
One more thing.
Oh.
If you guys hear on the Chatter After, we are talking Daredevil Born Again later this week, because we are in the finale. Daredevil, Kingpin, Bullseye, Punisher. It's a lot going on in this last episode of Born
Vanessa?
And Vanessa, for some reason. She's a main character now. I don't understand this show. We're going to break it down later this week on Assembled, so check that out.
And for things like that, for Crazy Vanessa, is why you should subscribe to the Shatter After. Great convos on the things that we love and enjoy in all mediums. Now, till we see you next time, endure and survive. See you guys. Peace.